So at this point, Tom, you have met Bob Skinner. You have a place to work on the car at the motel. You have the support of Mrs. Skinner. Now, a lot of people think of the surfers as Skinner, Job, and Sorokin, which they are, but there was an earlier incarnation, the Skinner, Job, and Crosser venture. Can you tell us a little bit about Jimmy Crosser and his involvement with the car?
Yes. Jimmy Crosser was another Santa Monica guy, great guy. Jimmy was a full partner in it originally. There was 3 of us involved. We didn't have a driver. Jimmy was fantasizing that he might like to drive it, but that fantasy went away the first time he sat in it with the motor running, I think. Anyway, so Bob Skinner was in Europe. He wanted to go live in Europe for a while, so he was over there for about maybe 6 months, and he was staying with the parents of one of the tool makers that worked at my dad's factory. And so anyway, Jimmy and I had been talking about building a dragster, or fantasizing, not talking about it, fantasizing is what we were doing. And so when Skinner came home, we hit him with it, and he thought about it for about 10 seconds, and he said, yeah, let's do it. And of course, now we've overloaded ourselves, with our rash questions here. So anyway, off we go. And so there's the 3 of us. And so we got the car built, and it's still the 3 of us. And then we start running the car, and there were some conflicts, and it kind of involved the first time that Mike Sorokin drove for us. He ended up quitting over a little problem with Jimmy, and Jimmy was figuring out that he really didn't need to be involved in this. So anyway, at some point Jimmy left, and then later we got Mike Sorokin to come back.
Yeah, but as far as the actual construction of the car, all 3 of you guys are broke as church mice. So explain how Mrs. Skinner came to the rescue with her creative financing.
Well, no, that was between Bob Skinner and his mother. I don't know how all that went down, but didn't want to know. But anyway, some creative financing was happening, and Jimmy was older than us, maybe by a year or 2, and Jimmy's dad was a framing guy, a carpenter. So Jimmy was in the union, and Jimmy made pretty good money. But of course, Jimmy was already married and had some kids, I think, at this point. So he had more uses for his money than he had money, I think. So he was probably as broke as we were. We just didn't have the wife and kids. But
it all started off with this cardboard man that was kind of an average of the current drivers that you were measuring, and it all started with cardboard and push pins.
Yes, let me elaborate on that. So we decided to build this dragster. Well, the garage is an old time small garage. It's however many feet long. So we figure, let's go get us some butcher paper, and we'll clean off all the stuff on the wall. We'll put the butcher paper up there, and we'll draw a side view of the car on the wall. And obviously, if it fits on the paper, it'll fit in the garage. No problem. So we get our paper up there, and we start drawing. And by this time, Skinner and I have talked this over, and we decide we've got to make sure we can't fit in this car. In case we run out of brains and somebody says, well, you can't do this or that. Well, here, get out of the way and I'll show you. Because we both sort of have that tendency. So we decided we need to make this car absolutely not fit us. And Bob Skinner's probably about 6 foot, let's say 6 foot. And so we got to make sure that we can't possibly fit in it. So we decide what we'll do is we want to make this thing ergonomically correct. So we start measuring everybody that comes around the garage. We go, oh, here, we'll measure from here to here and here to here. And we make this cardboard man, and we got little pop rivets for pivots. So we got a complete
anatomically correct, 1-to-1 scale driver,
which is an average of all the people that showed up that were in the sort of 5'6", 5'8", which is plenty. Most people are. You know, a lot of people are in that height, maybe even a bit higher. So we just kind of averaged that and maybe fudged it down to be sure that the 6-footer that Skinner couldn't fit in it, right? And if he couldn't fit, obviously I couldn't fit. So we got this guy, and then we hold him up on the wall, and we can see, you know, with his legs going over the rear end, because we wanted to move the seat up, but how far do you move it up? And you can see in those pictures of the Greeks, the car that we copied.
Yeah, well, this was a big influence, the original Greek car here.
Yeah, this is actually a Rod Stuckey copy of a Fuller. And then we're copying that, so we're pretty far down the food chain here but it's Kent Fuller. But so we take and we squeeze the seat forward so it's closer to the rear wheels. Because this car anybody could fit in. And this one not so many people could fit in. So anyway, our cardboard man, we've got him up on the wall, and then there's a question about where the clutch pedal is going to be. So you can just put his leg, and you can just wiggle everything. And anyway, it ended up helping us with a lot of problems. But the main thing it did was it made sure we couldn't get in it and drive it up. You know, we could get in it with the cowl off.
Your knees and your chin.
Yeah, I got in it one time. They kept after me about getting in it. So we're at Long Beach one night, or one afternoon, and so they said, you got to fire this thing up. Okay. And they weren't taking no, they wouldn't take no for an answer. So we took the cowl off so my knees could go up. But then you could either steer or you could pull on the brake, but you couldn't do both. Because my knees in the gap between the two. So
now this being post-war, there was plenty of that 4130X tubing around and
LA was full of it.
Right. So there was no issue in getting materials to match your enthusiasm, and here we go.
Yes,
yeah.
And the rules hadn't advanced to the point where all of that was controlled. I think you could still use muffler tubing if you wanted, I believe. I'm not sure where we were on that. But the 4130X, which was the Korean War version of 4130, they were missing some ingredient that was in short supply, so they doctored the formula a little bit. Well, the aircraft industry couldn't use the surplus 4130X, so there was tons of it around LA, and it was cheap. And you could just go buy a pile of it, and it was good stuff. But anyway, the Greek's car, Stuckey car, that was a Fuller car copy, or anyway, this car we didn't copy it, it was our inspiration. And we used the same color scheme, black frame, silver body. And of course the Greek was our hero. I mean, he was the baddest of the bad, you know. He was great. He made it all look so effortless. We thought, God, I wonder if we could pull that off somehow.
So you have your chassis made. Did you bend the sheet metal for it yourself?
The sheet metal?
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
We didn't know how to bend tubing, so we had to take it and get it bent. But we built it right there in the Red Apple in the garage.
Right down to the upholstery. Correct?
Well, one of our friends, Bob Kohler, the late Bob Kohler, good guy, he worked at a high-end upholstery place in Santa Monica that did sports car stuff. A lot of it was done by mail order. Real upscale stuff. And he could do beautiful work. So he offered to build the upholstery for it. God, that'd be great, you know. Because, you know, again, we have no idea how we're going to pull this off, and there's no money to buy it. So he starts making the upholstery, and he kind of was giving up. Thought he couldn't pull it off, and I said, oh yeah, you can pull it off. We can pull it off. So pretty soon, he and I are down where he works at night working on it, and we wrapped up the last of the details that he was struggling with. But anyway, just the upholstery was beautiful. Never gave a lick of problems, and he knew all about. We sealed up the back of it so the oil wouldn't get in it. They had all the stuff to do that. And it was just beautiful. Anyway, Bob Kohler did a great job on that. Looks like we got a little carried away with the amount of those little snap buttons. I guess my thoroughness maybe I freaked out a little bit. Where you can see it on the Greek's car, there's one, every 6 inches. Hey, if some's good, more's better,
Now, in typical hot rod fashion, some of the car is repurposed, like the fuel tank. The fuel tank was originally vitamin containers.
Yes, it was made out of 2 vitamin bottles from the junkyard, from Ideal Metals junkyard in Culver City.
Things like that, I think, are just so pure to the sport. I mean, if you did that nowadays, number one, you'd be laughed out of the pits. And number two, they wouldn't let you run the car anyway.
It'd be against the rules.
Yeah.
Yes.
But it's
no, all of drag racing was done that way then. That was just ordinary. If you had money, you bought it. If you didn't have money, you did something else. Mm-hmm. But we made it real tidy looking. I mean, you couldn't really tell. And at the time, we didn't know how to. We had just found out that welding rod wasn't coat hangers.
Well, that vinyl was the flux, right, on the coat hanger.
Well, they didn't have flux. They didn't have vinyl on coat hangers in those days. But fortunately, we had just found that out, and so we found out about real welding rod. But of course, we didn't know about how to heliarc weld. And there were some good aircraft welders around L.A.
So the original chassis was just oxyacetylene and gas welded?
Yeah, I did all that right there in the garage. But oxyacetylene was very acceptable. It's very good welding, actually.
Can you hold that up for us?
Oh, yeah. But say the aluminum gas tank, it was 2 vitamin bottles that had they came up, had a tapered, and then a neck. So we cut the neck off, put a cap over there, then cut the thing off, and then did that to another one, and then joined the 2 in the middle, and then put the bung back on the same vitamin bottle bung right back on the top. So that required heliarc welding. Mm-hmm. So we go to these, there was 2 good welding places, older guys, great guys too. So we'd take the stuff over there, we'd get it all cut, fit, go over there and hold it, they'd tack it, they'd weld it up for us, right? On the trick stuff. But getting back to that body, we hadn't figured out what all those numbers were on the aluminum yet. So
like 60, 61.
Yeah, we didn't know what all that meant. So you go to the junkyard and you'd bend the corner of the sheet. And if you could bend it with your fingers, we figured, that's body material, We didn't know about some of them you can't weld. So some of this is made out of non-weldable aluminum. And so we curved the aluminum around the back, one piece just wrapped around the back, and then the bottom was welded onto it. But we just beat the aluminum around here's the frame, we beat the aluminum around, and then the frame would keep the weld from falling through, and we didn't know how to do it. But anyway, we got it all welded, and then we'd weld and scuff it, file it off. It came out looking like we knew what we were doing, which we did not. But the only thing on this car that wasn't done in the garage were things like heliarc, welding the vitamin bottles together, bending the tubing, of course. These headers were made out of 4130. We had them bent at a swimming pool place that made swimming pool
like
stuff.
handrails and stuff?
Yeah, those big curved things with a chrome ladder that goes down into the pool. These were bent at a place that did that because they did really nice work so that you could chrome them.
Yeah.
Where some of the tube bending was sort of rude and crude. A lot of it was being done with torches.